Hi, welcome to my presentation. Today we are going to be talking about siblicide within insect groups, and particularly I'm focusing on the European earwig and the parasitic wasp. Um, let's continue on to slide number 2 then. So, to begin with, what is siblicide exactly? In layman's terms, it's pretty much just the act of killing a sibling. Simple enough, right? But what is it in the world of behavioral ecology? Well, siblicide can be for any number of reasons. It can be for resource competition, it can be to ensure dominance in a mating group, it can be for a lot of things. Um, Now, for the insects, you'll see that it varies a little bit, but ultimately they have the sort of the same theme between both parasitic wasps and European earwigs. I would like to switch slides and go to talk about the European earwig first. So, the European earwig won't just do siblicide. Like they're not just born and decide, oh, I'm going to kill my baby brother today or anything like that. They are determined based on environmental conditions. After hatching, they are in a bit of a nymph stage. They're, just as you can see the picture there, they're just these tiny little white insects, crawling around the ground. Um, if there is a small amount of resources in any given area, then you will see them start to, kill other earwigs. But if there's a good amount of resources, you won't actually see them start to do that. Um, but this brings me to the next slide, and the question: is this siblicide, though? Well, it may lead to siblicide. In a study conducted back in 2010, there were, multiple different groups of earwigs all put inside of a sort of cage. There was one earwig cage that had only related individuals, and they were given a few resources to handle. There was one that had a great deal of related individuals, but a small amount of unrelated individuals as well. And then there is another cage which is just completely unrelated individuals, different eggs of many different groups. And they also held this with control of one cage that had many earwigs, but they also had a lot of resources. And of course, in that cage, you didn't see any form of them killing each other. But what is interesting about that is whenever you look at the cage with all unrelated individuals, it just seemed random. They would start killing the other, whatever other earwigs they could get their hands on. If you go to the cage where there were just a couple of unrelated individuals, but the rest of them were unrelated, you would see, or a couple of unrelated individuals, but the rest were related, you would see that the unrelated individuals would actually be picked off first. And then after they were gone, you would start to see siblicide occur between the related individuals. Bring that to the other cage where it was just related individuals, and you would see siblicide almost immediately. So, generally, they would only resort to siblicide if they absolutely needed to. And that's different in the case of the creature we're going to see in this next slide here with the parasitic wasp. And as you can see, in this picture, there's these tiny little eggs placed all over this caterpillar, and that's how they feed. The study actually has to do with two different wasps. There's a social group of wasps called A. palipes, which I'm just going to refer to as palipes, and then there was a mostly solitary group of wasps called genevensis, which I'm only going to call genevensis. Now, I would like to state before getting further into this, Neither are eusocial. There's not distinct roles for each of them, and there's no rules to who can breed and who can't breed. Um, that being said, the communal wasps do tend to stay in a group. They have very short life expectancies, and they are built mostly around reproductive success, whereas the solitary one has a much longer lifespan and is in general bigger. Now, what we're going to see in the next slide is one of those species, the solitary one, Genevensis, will commit siblicide, and it's not particularly based on the exact environmental conditions, whereas Palipes won't. So why? Well, one of the major aspects of it is generally, since you're going to have a shorter lifespan as Palipes to begin with, you're going to also increase your indirect fitness as much as possible. They breed and then die not long after, just a little bit of living in between. Whereas Genevensis has a much longer time to live, and during that time, their direct fitness is a lot more important than their indirect. So they reduce competition by eating others. They increase their fat reserves by eating others, and then they continue on. As solitary creatures, this is very good for them. Now, this is going to bring me to the next slide, our conclusion. What is the general trend between these? Well, it almost completely comes down to competition of some form. In the case of the earwigs, if there's so many earwigs and very few resources for them to compete against each other with, then you're going to run into a bit of an issue. If everybody wants food, but there's no food for everybody, then you're just going to have a lot more people dying at once. That's pretty much what's happening with the earwigs, and that's why they are killing each other. Whereas with A. genevensis, they are doing it just to ensure a societal role going forward, or not a societal role, just a breeding role going forward. This is to ensure survival to some extent for both of them, and then eventually direct fitness. And here are my references. Thank you for sticking with me during my presentation, and have a wonderful day.